So basically, you like representing the whole construction industry for the Enterprise Alliance, right?
15 trillion in assets is global as built environment. If you were to add up all of the bridges and buildings and everything built today, it's approximately 15 trillion.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 34th episode of Colors of Web3 and Entrepreneurship. My name is Lum, your Web3 host. For those of you who are new to the show, Colors of Web3 and Entrepreneurship is a show highlighting the journeys of builders and innovators in Web3 and entrepreneurship. Some topics, especially in Web3, may get technical, but we do our best to keep it accessible for most people. Here I am today. I'm joined by Jonathon Chambless. He's the CEO and co-founder of Lv8r Labs. And also we have Jay Smith, who is the Vice President of Development at IDD Labs. Gentlemen, maybe let's go with Jon and Jay first. Can you give a quick introduction by yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for the invitation. So my background is previously portfolio management. I was a mid-rise declarant transition specialist, meaning I was responsible for the handover process between developers and stakeholders of a commercial real estate asset. I left portfolio management to get in further into construction management, even dabbled into the design aspect before I recognized that really software scales differently than building buildings. And so I pivoted into tokenization, securitization, Web3 broadly, participated in a number of hackathons and DAO communities around the globe. And so I find myself now in the securitization and tokenization space for commercial real estate appraisal and finance.
Awesome. And you, Jay?
Yeah, I'm Jay Smith. I'm with IDD Labs. We are the primary instigators, I guess, of the Accumulate blockchain, which is the hard fork as of 2022 of the Factum blockchain that was launched back in 2015. And I come from a long career of building big financial systems over the years. Somehow stumbled into blockchain in 2018 with Factum. And now I spend my time working with people like Jon, helping him leverage what we've done at Accumulate to do more with blockchain.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds like a very interesting collaboration there. Jon, I think you said you're doing like portfolio manager. So it sounds like you've been in real estate for a pretty long time, right? So what was the thing that made you realize that, or what got you started in Web3 in the first place? Like, did you see some connection between Web3 and real estate, or
Sure.
what was it?
So my experience of portfolio management and construction broadly was very negative reinforcement based, meaning I experienced lots of people and products doing things not the best way possible because of an incentive problem, meaning they were negatively incentivized to underperform. This is a huge problem in construction management and real estate operations in general. So I recognized that if I really wanted to have any type of impact and change, right, in the space I'm a professional in, I'd have to understand really where the incentive come from. This is what drove me to like self-sovereign data and Web3. Ironically, my exposure to Jay Smith was in a hackathon over 2.5 years ago, Chainlink, Accumulate, and Inveniam hackathon. Actually, no, excuse me. The first one was a tokeny Inveniam hackathon the year before. The second one was a CoinDesk Web3athon. So I had put several product decks together based on my understanding of very sophisticated, complex systems, but I understood the real estate portion. So I presented products that were basically all car and no motor. And it took me a couple of years of learning enterprise systems, edge compute, really an education from IDD crew, the Inveniam team, and several of the global DAO organizations that showed me what secondary markets, derivatives, all of the really fun stuff we like to talk about in financial instruments and Web3. But there is a seriousness to it in securitization and commercial real estate finance and what we broadly call TradFi, real world assets. So paying homage to the fact that I recognize security tokens were going to be a thing, several years ago. How we leverage those security tokens, how we transition from a DeFi, TradFi world to a hybrid, right? I really felt like that's where the next generation, the next things were going to be, was understanding how securitization and real world assets are really going to affect even real estate guys, right? Non-technical, non-software engineers are going to be affected by the changes of AI and blockchain, and I wanted to be positioned well for that.
Awesome. Sounds like a very interesting journey you've been on. There's a few questions I actually want to understand, and also maybe for the viewers as well too. I guess one is that you mentioned that in the real estate industry, people want to underperform because I guess there's a misalignment incentive. Can you explain a bit more about that for those who may not be familiar with real estate and maybe in commercial real estate too?
Sure. So in development broadly, we have a really poor adoption of technology. You have the large developers and general contractors. They're using cutting edge BIM systems. They're using engineers, basically mechanical software
Well,
engineer hybrids.
can you quickly clarify what is VIM? What is
BIM
VIM
is
system for
building
those who don't know? Yeah.
information management. So think software specialty, full life cycle software architecture in construction management. So there are international standards of building management data
I
systems.
see.
And so I have tried not to reinvent the wheel with the technology. We wanted to use the existing high level data management systems for construction, but we wanted to use the self-sovereign rails. We wanted to use zero knowledge proofing environment. We wanted to use all the tools available to us, but again, not reinvent the wheel, just go straight to the highest forms of truth and the integrations. Where is the data currently sitting in? What are the common data environments the majority of construction management projects use? They're down to a handful of siloed organizations, no different than many other industries. So it was really understanding how to attack AEC, or architecture, engineering, and construction, using the self-sovereign and distributed systems, but in a way where we're actually adding value to the underlying asset. So much of what I deal with is when I'm understanding or breaking down other projects, right? I'm consulting for other tokenization real estate projects. What I spend a majority of my time doing, pointing out, is how the technology doesn't actually increase the value of the underlying asset. It's actually just an expense. It's like a double ledger problem, right? So it's cutting down to where is the data, how does the tools and technology actually leverage to increase the value of the underlying asset. And now we're talking about real estate, an asset class that most people are generally confident and comfortable with as far as an investment class.
Yeah, I see. Oh, interesting. I never actually look at it from that perspective. And then I think you also mentioned that you joined so many hackathons, right? So how many iteration or how many builds did you have to go
Sure.
through to actually come up with where you are now? Yeah.
Yeah. So, ironically, I have another hackathon this Thursday for the city of Phoenix. So the city I live in,
Oh, nice.
they're doing an affordable housing hackathon. So it's small little hackathons like these where I get to walk in and just crush the competition, because I have had years of performing in much more technical, difficult hackathon environments. But I have taken away from each one of those events a product knowledge, a user experience, and maybe a narrative, a product narrative. I have almost 2.5 years now in aggressive product market testing in my specific sector, and so it makes sense for me to just go into any event like that and really be a domain expert for the industry. And I was also recently invited to the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance for the Industry Index project. So they are very heavily researching how ETH is having an impact in Fortune 500 and global adoption of Web3. And so I'm kind of proud to stand up for construction management, who has little to no representation in decentralized systems in Web3, but bring that product expertise to it.
That's really cool. So basically, you like representing the whole construction industry for the what is it, Ethereum Alliance or something like that? Yeah.
15,
Like Enterprise Alliance, right?
15 trillion 15 trillion in assets is global as built environment. So if you were to add up all of the bridges and buildings and everything built today, it's approximately 15 trillion.
Oh, that's huge. Yeah, that's a lot of thing being built for sure. And I think earlier you mentioned, like, I mean, the whole objective any of the real estate project is to add value to the underlying assets. Would it be safe to, like, I guess the whole objective is like to increase the value of these real estate asset? Is that correct?
Yeah. So
To
so how
mm,
you structure your data becomes really important, and how the integrations and platforms you choose as stakeholders for the asset, how they add value. And most people feel like just because it says Web3, just because it says tokenization, just because it says blockchain, it automatically adds liquidity, which is hilarious because most people who have any experience in these markets will tell you just giving you access to wallets doesn't actually add liquidity, right? You have to have a valuable underlying asset. So there's actually like a chicken and an egg problem where you have to have the right asset, right, to bring to the marketplace, and then you have to have the right reception of it. And that right reception usually means the way the data was structured is it's not only an additive value, but it's a multiplicative value, right? And that's where most people are interested in. The real estate broadly has had a maybe rough history in secondary markets and derivative markets, but that's because if you look at the data in construction management, it's a nightmare, right? It's really bad. So if there is potential interest in derivatives and secondary markets of real estate, right, then you really have to up level the data. And to do that, we think cloud compute, local compute are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Jay Smith can speak to the IoT systems, the hardware integrations, and what we're broadly calling the elevator smart building system. If you think of like Carfax reports, right? Carfax report increases the value of a vehicle. I'm sorry, they're called Carfax here in the United States, but a history report of the maintenance and changes with the vehicle. That report adds value to that vehicle. We believe a smart building system using zero knowledge proofing is going to do a very similar thing, right? If you have very, very detailed records of the asset that live with the asset for the life of it, and all of the data is structured in a full life cycle design, right? Now we're cooking with gas. Now we're doing something that should be interesting to most people.
I see. Ah, interesting. So you did mention that the currently data for a lot of these construction projects is bad. Is it bad because of is the data collection process bad? Is the source of the data bad, or what is really bad about it?
Honestly, it's
Or,
kind of a little bit of all of them, right? A general slow technical adoption means you have a few people on a project with a very high level understanding and everyone else clueless. And so when you work with high level BIM consultants, building information management consultants, where they're not the contractor, they're just the consultant to come in, these guys really know data. They know data better than anyone else on the planet, right? And they are usually hired to bring a value add to the project, literally add valuation to the project because of the way they're structuring data. We think a lot of the historical knowledge that are held by these BIM professionals, this can be tokenized. This can be structured in a way that a federated data room or even a federated vectorized database, right, for model building. This is where we can use all of this expertise as validators, right? And now we can build even more robust systems where we can get what I like to call just in time data, just in time reporting, to where if everyone in the system, even those who do not like technical adoption, can have all of that data and workflow delivered to them, we can dramatically improve the performance of every member in the project because we're enforcing it on a technical level, if that makes sense.
yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, I mean that's cool. I actually never thought about how, like, I mean, that's I guess the impact of what technology can do, right? Yeah, to an industry. That's really cool. So before we deep dive into the company, just one fun question to both of you. I'm just curious, how do you guys do for fun outside of work,
Go, Jay.
personal hobbies?
Oh, well, well, at least for a while I flew gliders, which was really fun, and I got to go renew my license. because
Gliders?
there's
Is that like
just
the
no
little airplane?
no, the big
The ones you
sailplanes,
sit in.
the ones with the really long wings
Oh,
and no motor. You get towed up, and then you start looking for thermals, and you circle in the thermal. And one time I was out circling in a thermal, and there was a hawk circling with me, looking very confused, like, what are you doing here? It's just a rush, because it's kind of a mental game, because the thing that you need to find to stay up is invisible. There's only hints, like you see little puffy clouds. That's usually where there's a thermal under it, and you kind of have to guess and feel for it. So yeah, it's a fun thing to do. And then, I've got grandkids, so they're pretty exciting too.
I bet. Okay. Well, that sounds really cool. So that's something you do by yourself? Is that like a one-person sport, or do you need another person to
They've
support?
got two-person gliders, one person or two person, so you can
I
go
see.
with a
Ah.
friend sometimes and scare them to death. What do you mean? What do you mean there's no motor in this thing? What do you mean you can't go around? No, no. Once you decide to land, you're going to land.
That sounds like quite an adventurous sport. Yeah, I don't think I've tried yet, but I would love to try it someday. Hmm.
It's fun. It's actually really safe. As adventurous as it sounds, it's actually really safe.
Awesome. Yeah, good to hear. What about you, John? What do you do in your free time?
I prefer ground level, I guess. I'm actually a big paddler, water paddling. I love traditional dragon boat paddling. So 10 and 20 man. I'm actually
Hmm.
training with a top tier team, dragon boat team here in the U.S. So I really like paddling. I
I
think
didn't know that.
treading water for fun
Interesting.
points out how masochistic people actually are.
Really interesting. So there's like a team. Do you guys compete in, like, I don't know? Is there a league or something? Do you compete in
There's
for
worlds.
the?
There's a worlds
Well,
competition every year.
really
Taiwan was excuse me. Uh, yeah, I think it was Taiwan. But I have
hmm,
trained with many of Team USA for years, and so while I'm a little bit past my Team USA spot, there is a Senior A and Senior B Team USA team that I'm super excited about.
interesting. That sounds fun. Yeah, I did not know this was a sport. I thought it's just something people do for fun too. But yeah, sounds like cool. Awesome. Yeah. So without further ado, maybe let's go ahead and deep dive into your main company, your current company that you're building, John.
Sure, Jay. Did
Elevator
you
Labs. Feel free to share with us any presentation. Oh,
Did you have any
go ahead.
comments from any of my previous comments, Jay?
I think the only thing the biggest thing people talk about in tokenization is liquidity. That in
Hmm.
theory it brings liquidity, but as John points out, you put a token on a marketplace, and then someone comes and says, "That's a wonderful token you've got. What's it worth?" And if you point to a room full of file cabinets, you've kind of defeated the purpose. And so this is the problem that John and his crew is solving, and it's a really interesting problem. And it's I was just looking. In fact, I posted something on LinkedIn, I think yesterday. Um, depending on which prognosticator you listen to, the real world asset tokenization market between now and 2030 is going to be either 3 trillion, 16 trillion, or 32 trillion dollars. And it's a wide range, but it's a wide range that the whole range is pretty darn big. So this is
Yeah,
going to
it's
be an
huge. Yeah.
important part of our economy. And so the next 5 years are going to be really interesting. So
I agree.
Elevator Labs is going to
Yeah.
be right in,
Hmm.
they're going to be in an interesting position in the world.
This is the product vision of Elevator Labs. We were privileged to partner with Inveniam as an operating system. Inveniam Capital Group out of New York. have.
Can you quickly say a word about what Inveniam does? So maybe just to
Sure.
give
Yeah,
some
yeah,
background as
yeah.
well.
And
Yeah.
as
Mm.
a member of the Invenium team, Jay Smith can also speak to them. But in my experience, they are a team of long-term finance professionals. Rick Bunker, CTO, Pat O'Mara, CEO. These are guys who understand capital markets because they've had an entire career in capital markets. And when they talk about the structuring of data for AI and for distributed systems, right? They are speaking from a career much like Jay, entrenched in traditional finance and trying to employ many of the new technologies and systems we have access to. So as an operating system, essentially, Invenium has allowed me to build an application. And as an application, I get to connect with all of the major parties of AEC, or architecture, engineering, and construction. Let me see if I got that wrong.
Hey,
Oh,
John, can I do a quick explanation of what Invenium themselves do?
yes.
Because I think it's kind of key to everything else. So a minute ago, I talked about the fact that tokenization is going to be a big thing, and tokenization of real world assets, and that is, I have a housing complex, I have an apartment complex, or a shopping complex, whatever, office complex, or any other asset. And the idea is that I can take that asset and tokenize it. In other words, I create tokens that represent ownership portions of it. And like I talked about a minute ago, that's a great concept until you meet the reality where an investor comes in and says, nice token, what's it worth? And you point to the room full of file cabinets. That's the problem Invenium solves, is they are a Web3 company that goes to the asset owner, and they take all the data, but they don't actually take it. They just use the blockchain to record where it is and what it is, so that people can trust it. But they go find all that data. They find the rent rolls, the maintenance rolls, the legal stuff, all the stuff that actually defines the valuation of whatever this asset is. And they, first of all, capture that using blockchain so that it can be trustworthy. And then they take that information and create a virtual data room. So the room full of file cabinets and weird systems and stuff now becomes a virtual data room that can be tied to the token. So now all of a sudden, I've got a token, and I have a way, in a Web3 tokenized friendly way, to present what creates the value. And John is tying into this ecosystem to do a number of things to pull data. Like, for example, as these assets are created, there's a lot of data that's created that helps define the asset. And so John's building an entire ecosystem to collect that data up front, and he used the experts in that field. That, just having a document that says this building is 100 feet tall, or whatever might be interesting, but just having a document and showing it to you, you'd go, oh, okay, that's nice, that's a document. But the difference is, here's the document, and here's the recognized expert that has cryptographically certified that this is in fact true. There's a big difference in value there. And that's what John, in using Accumulate, which is identity based, but his that's what he's going to be telling you about, is how he's taking that ability to create this data room that's going to be so key to the coming tokenization of real world assets world, and extend it out to make it more valuable and create more value. Sorry, John, I got carried away. I always do.
No, no, and I think there's 2 points that I would like
Makes
to
sense.
hit on,
Mm.
and one is the product, and two is the users. So from a product standpoint, Invenium and IDD Labs gave me an education in enterprise level systems, right? Having a clear product market fit and a clear user demographic doesn't necessarily mean the system you're presenting them adds value to their workflow. So it was really important that I did the research as a professional to say, I have validated, right? I have verified both the Inveniam system and Accumulate. But what do I do with that? So I'm part of a community called BIM Heroes. BIM Heroes is 40,000 global AEC professionals, all who rally behind building information management. So remember all of those specialists I talked about earlier who are pushing how this technology is implemented.
Yeah.
Though 1%, 10%, 90% adoption, these are the 10%. And so while a lot of my time is spent explaining tokenization and securitization broadly to real estate professionals, really it's some of the leading technologists in AEC around the world that I'm also representing and honored to work with. So when you have such a sophisticated system like what I'm describing, and you have a validator network of the world's leading professional, now all of a sudden we're talking about something unique, right? We're talking about a very sophisticated, what we call in the industry, book of knowledge, right? This is all of the documentation and resources that your organization has access to, and a community of practice. And a community of practice is all of the members who rally around that. So in the age of AI, right, and model training, if data is the new oil, right, then I want to go to the guys who are not just token appreciators, but are token factories, and not just some token factories, literally the best token factories in the world. And where Inveniam and I both get really excited is when you do a comparative analysis among all of the best token factories in the world. Right now, what are we getting as an industry? We're getting enough qualified and validated data that secondary market starts to look very different.
Interesting. So would you say that your product is like a marketplace, a platform, or
In
for?
the Inveniam operating system, I would argue is one of the most sophisticated trading platforms ever made. It was not my intent to reinvent a trading marketplace, but to validate within that trading place market, and that's what Inveniam saw in me as a professional, and representing all of the potential validators I do. If I can wrangle all of these global validators into a decentralized system where we can do consensus and governance and have access to all of these on-chain analytics tools for construction management that don't exist, right? There is no Dune analytics dashboard for on-chain construction management data, but that world is very, very close. And some of the world's greatest construction management professionals are already thinking about and planning, how do you use those systems? How do you structure the proposals, the RFP systems for that governance and consensus? So I'm super bullish for on-chain analytics for construction management.
I see. When you say validators, in Web3, whenever I hear the word validators, because I imagine like the servers on some blockchain network who is conducting validating the validity of the smart contract and also the data itself. Is that what you're referring to, validators? Or are you
Yeah,
actually referring to
yes,
something
and
else?
I'll even let Jay speak on the validation system of Accumulate, because I'm hugely bullish on that system as well.
Accumulate is there are a lot of blockchains in the world that are smart contract platforms, and Accumulate is not one of those. We are not a smart contract platform at all. What we're built to do is address some of the weaknesses of smart contract platforms that are inherent in the concept. And this is not, I mean, smart contracts are one of the greatest inventions of the last, 2 decades or so, trillions of dollars of value. but they have inherent in them, there are certain things they don't do well. They don't handle data well because, a basic computer science model is you build systems in layers with an application layer and a data layer. That's not the way smart contract platforms are designed. They smash the data and the application together in the smart contract. Accumulate's designed to act as a data layer underneath a blockchain data layer underneath those smart contract platforms, so you can build more sophisticated systems. And as a result, we're designed to organize data and authority under identities. And so our blockchain is organized around identities. Identities can hold identities, which make it hierarchical. And so you don't necessarily
Okay.
have one set of validators like most blockchains. You can have subnets of the blockchain that have their own set of validators and are enforcing a specific set of rules for the data that subset is managing. For example, in John's case, their consortium will be running sets of validators that are enforcing the rules. And the interesting thing about this is that subset of validators will be a private network, it would be private permissioned, but because the proof structure, because we separate the data and the proof structure anchors into the public nets above it. So even though this subnet is private and permissioned, when John's organization, when Lv8r Labs or anybody associated with it hands a piece of data out of that private network to somebody else outside the network, they can also hand the proofs that lead up to the public witness anchors, so that that data can be cryptographically proven even though it's a private network, without showing them the rest of the data. And so you've got all the
I
advantages
see.
of a
Similar to
private network.
ZK.
Well, no, not at all. This is really different than ZK, because there's actually a private subnet, and it's not. And I can use ZK to hand you data, that to hand you with this. I'm handing you the actual data, right? I'm here is this piece of data, and I can cryptographically prove it. Where with ZK, I could hand you, here's proof that John is 21. I'm not going to actually give you his birth certificate, but I'm going to give you proof of
Yeah.
something. And you can do that with ours too. If you want to do that as well, you can do it, but you actually have a private subnet, and that private subnet has its own validators that are validating the rules. So now I've essentially got a subnet that it's own DAO, is one way to think about it. That all of the consortium members are running this DAO, but it's being held accountable by the entire network. So it still has full blockchain security, even though it's private. It's enforcing a set of business rules, but being held accountable by the entire network for the data.
I
And,
see.
and that's what we're focusing on. And then smart contract applications can use that data.
Most of the users of the Lv8r Lab systems do not have the technical training to be in command line interface or to really be writing the code for their projects or their workflow. So what Jay Smith, what Accumulate, and what Inveniam has done for me personally is they've brought self-sovereign data, they've brought zero-knowledge proofing-like systems, they've brought a federated data room, they've brought all of these tools to me as a real estate professional to where I don't need to understand code. I do understand product, I do understand workflow within the product, and I understand how that product affects my business. But now I can make a recommendation to products to other professionals like myself who can also skip the learning curve of needing to understand command line interface or any code necessary to deploy these tools into their technical stack live. And so this was this was the intent of the elevator system from the beginning, was to create a set of tools and systems that allow AEC professionals to not have to write code, but still have access to some of the most sophisticated self-sovereign data systems and AI modeling systems, federated vectorized database, right? How to have access to these tools without having to code them up themselves. And in a enterprise level 99.9% uptime.
Right. And
I
since
see. Cool. Yeah.
I was going to say, since Accumulate is identity, one of the things we were talking about is a lot of the value of the data is derived from the fact that who said it. Not only what was said, but who said it, who attests to this document.
Where it came from.
Accumulate is identity based, and so it has blockchain based identities, and Jon's users will be using basically identity wallets where they can use their identity to sign the document coming in, that sort of thing. And this is all built in at the blockchain level, which makes it easier for them.
Okay, so I guess identity would be like the wallet and the user, right? And then they would do some sort of a transaction conducted. But Jon and Jay, maybe can you guys walk me through a simple user journey or user flow of how it works? And what I mean, I understand this is like a digital attestation, right? For what
Yes.
is it, ACE? What is architectural construction? And I forgot the last one.
Engineering and construction.
Stand for
AEC.
engineering, right?
Yeah, broadly built environment. So
Okay,
the
AEC.
guys that are building any structure.
There you go.
The user experience is going to be kind of one of two as we see it. Either you're going to be a finance professional, fund manager, financial institution, or you're a developer, a project developer, construction management. And so most projects actually require a pairing of both of those, right? You need the guy who's going to actually build the building, guys, girls build the building, and then you need the fund manager who are going to build feasibility and fund the deal and manage the equity afterwards. So what the platform was intended to do was to marry both of those in an internationally standard compliant construction management environment, meaning everyone who shows up to play is now in compliance as long as they follow the rules of the system, right? And in addition to that, we bring those financial institutions and fund managers and those developers together. So now that we're rallying behind a system that increases the value of the asset through appraisal, right? Appraisal is very important as a process in construction management. If you're not appraising the asset correctly, then you could be implementing a double spend problem, and now you're not actually adding value to the asset. You're not really doing anything with the tokenization that it wasn't already doing before. So this is where a system like ours connects financial institutions and fund managers in a financial reporting system that essentially automates that financial reporting, and it has baked in the value of that automation into the appraisal process. This is very, very important. This is unique and novel because if you're trying to increase the value of the underlying asset, the way you do so is structuring the data where that structured data is baked into the appraisal of the asset. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I guess my follow-up question, because obviously I'm not familiar with your construction industry that much, besides of my knowledge about Autodesk, the probably one of the biggest company in the industry.
That's it.
How do your user? You said two, right? There's like fund professional who fund the deals, manage equities afterward, and then the guys who build the building. So how do they currently, conduct this process? How do they go through this process without your product at the moment?
Sure. So in construction management, Autodesk Cloud is probably one of the most renowned, cloud applications for structuring data in a common data environment is what they call it. So common data environments are traditional siloed databases that are structured in a way that the users can benefit from that structure. Well, the problem is Autodesk Cloud owns all of your data, and they can do whatever they want with it with your permission. And you hope that they only do the things with it that they say they will do. In an edge system, you can build an almost identical user experience, but do so with the users having a key to their data, to their data storage, right? And having control, having a knob they can turn for whether they want to use local compute versus cloud compute in very sophisticated systems. And this is a level of sophistication and control that is not currently in the industry. This is what I'm talking to the Autodesk Cloud guys about. They're also very interested in how distributed systems are going to affect the industry in the very near future.
Well, I was going to
Well,
say,
yeah.
I think it might be useful to just kind of take a path through the data and how it's used step by step. And I think that might. So at during construction, Lv8r Labs would have a node out in the construction site that would
At
be
the property.
used to gather data during the construction process, even using IoT devices. And here, this is where Accumulate comes in, because having digital identities, the IoT devices themselves will have digital identities and be digitally signing the data. So I've got all of this data coming into a local node of the blockchain, being held accountable by the rest of the blockchain, and being signed off by the various people who are responsible. So
Local
as I'm
validators.
building the asset, I'm building the data that defines the value of the asset. That, how was this built? Because what corners were cut, because that helps define the data, the value of the data. And all of this is being not fed into, but being kept track of by the Inveniam system. The Inveniam system leaves data in its resting place, but tracks where it is and credentials it with the blockchain. So if it gets changed, it knows. So all this data is coming in onto the Accumulate blockchain that's defining the data. And so at some point, I now have a project that's done, and the investors that invested in it originally would like to tokenize this and sell it out and get money, liquidity. And so now all of this is in the Invenium system, and then that's used for two things. One, during the initial, when trying to sell the tokens, a data room that just, this is how much this is worth. And then ongoing, you for private assets, regulatory requirements require you to get regular valuations, to keep your valuations up to date. And having all of this data and having it, when I look at a piece of data that says something about the building or whatever the property is, and I've got cryptographic signatures on the data, the person doing the valuation, it shortens their work because they don't have to go track down and check and make sure, because it's kind of like, okay, this is stamped in concrete, so I can trust this piece. Does this make sense so far? And that's Jon is
Yeah,
providing
makes
this
sense.
connection between the real world all the way back to these digital assets, and which is kind of the final piece, because it's been for years now, for several years, it's been going to be the world, or it's going to be the year of tokenized assets, but really it's just been the early adopters playing with them.
Of derivatives.
And because the early adopters will put up with the not really having the data and having to track it down, because they're doing it because it's cool and they're early adopters and they like to do this stuff. But the actual financial people don't want to screw with all that. They just want the data in a form that they can trust. And that's what Jon's doing.
I would also add, if you kind of want to simplify it, Invenium system as a very, very sophisticated trading platform handles all regulatory requirements. Super important, right? Super important if you want to be in securitization and real world assets. You have to be regulatory compliant. I would also, you want to be regulatory compliant and ISO building compliant, right? You want to have the best of both worlds. Well, how do you determine that? Well, you scrape your common data environment. You literally pull all of the data from your common data environment, and if we have structured our product correctly, then at the end, the users who's having their common data environment scraped, they meet regulatory and international ISO compliance. That's pretty cool. That doesn't currently exist in the marketplace before Lv8r Labs.
Yeah, and something you
I
mentioned
see.
a minute
Mm.
ago, that Autodesk, they're the biggest, they're the 800-pound gorilla, but they are at the project level. The people building the project, they're paying for that. After the project goes from being a project to being an asset, there's kind of a gap between what the building, the people that are responsible for building the building, they don't necessarily care about tokenization, even though they're the ones running the building information systems. So John's helping to span that gap from the building world into the financial tokenization world.
And I have 10 years doing this, just not for tokenization, for traditional finance professionals.
Hmm. Interesting. So let me recap a couple of points here to make sure I get it correctly. So it sounds like you are creating a very much like compliant, like something that will be replacing the common data environment, like you said, right?
Eventually,
Yeah, with
yeah.
the Autodesk Cloud, and then yeah, make it very compliant and regulatory. But then, of course, using a lot of the benefits of the blockchain, such as being able to verify and then own your own data and many other properties that come with the Accumulate blockchain, is my
Yeah.
Absolutely.
summary on point. Yeah. Okay. I think now I get a better picture now of it. And then when you say trading, does that mean like people will be able to tokenize and then trade on your platform?
So my first US based services client is a company called Building out of Wisconsin. They are a broker dealer led secondary market. So we intended to work with many secondary marketplaces. Basically, every deal has their own secondary marketplace. But for that second
When you say secondary market, does that mean like, is that like, what does it mean in the real
trading
estate?
of fractionalized equity, right? If you want a
Oh,
fractionalized portion of
okay.
equity, you're trading a portion of that fractionalized equity. How you present that as a financial instrument, right, is very important from a regulatory standpoint. So while many of my construction management professionals can go into the system and they're interested in how they can attribute data to a securitization system, it's actually the fund managers and the financial institutions who are interested in taking that structured data and now applying it for secondary markets. But again, they have a regulatory compliance aspect, and the project managers have a regulatory compliance. So it's really creating a system efficiently and effectively that manages that handover process from pre-construction all the way through post-construction valuation.
The thing that John is pointing out, that kind of sideways, is that Lv8r Labs and Inveniam, their market is really huge, because if you think about it, they're they are making the tokens valuable on every marketplace. Any place in the world that is selling tokenized assets will have an interest in making those tokenized assets more valuable and more liquid. And that's what John and his partner at Inveniam, that's what they're providing, is a way to make those tokens more valuable
And compliant.
and
Nice.
compliant.
Awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
those darn
Yeah.
regulators.
Yeah, I think compliance is always, I guess, necessary in the big market like the US. But then I guess one question I have about the liquidity. So where would the liquidity come from? Do you actually need market makers for this?
I think there are two different types of
Multiple
market
tokens.
makers. I think there's the market makers who are current broker dealer ATSs or alternative trading systems. You have like Rialto, Oasis Pro, a number of broker dealers who are already very familiar with these high level systems for managing equity. And then you have the kind of general marketplace of maybe Web3 enthusiasts or professionals who want to have access to secondary markets that they wouldn't otherwise have access to because they're not a REIT company, right? They don't specialize in real estate investment trusts, which is a multi-layer organization including financing.
You have to be REIT to invest into
you
this
you would need to
into the
be
secondary
you would
market.
need to be an accredited investor to have access to any of the
I see.
deals
Makes
worth
sense.
investing in my opinion. So this is really it's an improvement, it's an efficiency play for the institutional investors and broker dealer alternative trading systems. For non-institutional investors, it's democratization. Right now you have access to a potential fractionalized equity that you wouldn't through a registered broker dealer, through a registered secondary marketplace. But the quality of asset you would never had access to if it wasn't for the democratization of the Lv8r platform.
Well, I was on the topic of liquidity. This is one of the, I talked about the separating the application layer and the data layer. This is one of the places that it's really interesting because in order to have liquidity, I if I have a token and I want to offer it and make it liquid, I would like to have it on as many marketplaces as possible to expose it to as
Yeah.
many investors as possible. However, a security token, as they're generally constructed, they're a smart contract. And a smart contract has the behavior and the data together, which means that token can only exist on a single marketplace because the data is in it, right? And it's really the data that defines this particular token, this particular part of that project. And so I can only have it on one marketplace, which isn't very good. And this is one of the big reasons why you want to divide data and application, because the application is, the security token implements all of the regulatory rules, but that has nothing to do with the data. And so by having a model where I've got the smart contract implementing the regulatory rules, which is what these security tokens do, that's tied to the data on a blockchain layer underneath it, all of a sudden I can have that same token on a dozen different marketplaces. And in fact, I can have it on an Ethereum marketplace, a Polygon marketplace, an Avalanche marketplace, a Solana marketplace. And so suddenly the investors are able to expand. This is one of the reasons that's been holding the growth down because, most of these private asset projects are really big, you know, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars. And to get that kind of liquidity, you need lots of marketplaces. And so that's one of the things that Accumulate does. I just had to get my one little commercial in for the really cool stuff we do.
The future is multi-chain, right? And it's multi-model.
Yes.
That's my opinion. My professional
Yep.
opinion is the world of AEC is moving into a multi-chain, multi-model environment, and if you want to add value to your underlying assets, you have to hit compliance. But after compliance, it's integration, right? It's composability. How many different systems and or marketplaces can you interact with?
When you say multi-model, are you referring to like what exactly are you referring to?
So, what are you doing with a federated vectorized database, right? You're training a model for machine learning or future agent systems is what I like to broadly call it. So, I
Okay.
think Web3 or blockchain actually becomes more robust with AI. I think it's actually the tie of AI and or cloud compute and blockchain that really pushes adoption of these systems to the masses because what's in it for me with them. What's in it for me is, as a professional, the machine learning learns from every one of my projects, and they inform me with the data and workflow I need to have to perform every single day. Well, to do that, you have to structure that data in a way where any model can reference that data correctly. And to train that model, you need a system of validators. So if you're going to train a very sophisticated workflow model, right, a task workflow model for construction management, you would want to have the validation from a large group of well-known validators, but then you want to push as many projects through that system as possible. So now the collective data, that on-chain analytics from all of these on-chain projects now benefit the community in a new way that no other system, I guess, besides Autodesk Cloud in their very closed environment. That this is what the big guys are doing with data, with some of the largest construction management companies on the planet. And we're having those conversations with those construction companies because they are starting to recognize the value of edge systems.
Nice. So I guess your main, would you say like the majority of your main business customer would be the construction companies?
Again, it's two. It's finance.
Two. Yeah, and the fund
And
professional, right?
exactly. It's you have to have both for every single project. And so if you can create a system that brings both of those together in an ecosystem where you have lots of high-level broker dealers with alternative trading systems and all of that distribution, but you're also introducing a whole new ecosystem of validators and that potential distribution, that's where things get exciting.
I see. Yeah, makes sense. So I guess there'll be some sort of a network effect as well, right? As you grow bigger and
I
have
hope.
more both fund professional and the the construction professional AEC. Yeah, my bad if
We
I'm
call it syndication here in the
doing that
US.
right.
When you get those two together in a group, we call those a syndicate.
Okay.
And we love
Cool.
Metcalfe's law, the network effect.
Nice. Yeah, I think, man, who doesn't love network effects and Metcalfe law in the technology world? I think Jay, earlier you were saying that so right now, I mean, most of these data and even the tokenized token is just exists on the Accumulate blockchain, but you can actually export it to other big marketplace, right? How does that work? Like for now, I'm talking about like many other blockchain, right? How would that
Yeah,
work?
well again, when it's Accumulate being a data layer for blockchains allows you could, like the typical security token, you've got it's got a bunch of smart contract rules around the regulatory rules, and then there's the data. And so what we do is if you take that same smart contract but have it wherever it references, like the name of the security or the owner or whatever, it simply oracles out, and we have technology for doing this, down to Accumulate, which is another blockchain layer, right? And this is the typical. I mean, if you think about how programs are built in general, think about, I'm writing a big payroll system, and you'll have an Oracle database underneath it, and Jay Smith will be in that Oracle database as an entity, and there might be lots of different programs that are using that one Jay Smith, and sometimes even simultaneously. And you can't do that right now with just smart contract technology, because the program and the data are all in one package. So what we allow you to do is pull that data out of that package, which is how the rest of the it's kind of funny. Every time we come up with in the computer science world, in engineering, it seems like every time we come up with a new shiny technology, we forget everything we've ever learned. And so, despite the fact that for the last 100 years we've figured out that engineering best practice, you build things in layers, application layer, data layer. If you build it that way, it's going to be more flexible, more maintainable, lower cost of ownership, less brittle, the whole
The
things.
modular
And
way,
so
right?
modular, yes, exactly. And so smart contract technology comes out, and we forget all of that, and we build everything into one little box. And now we're coming along behind and offering a way, okay, let's get back to good engineering. Let's separate the data out. And so that's what we do. And that allows you to do things like, I have a token over here on Solana that references this data, that references Jay Smith, and I have a token over here on Avalanche that references Jay Smith. And just like that payroll system can have multiple programs referencing the same data, now we can do that in the blockchain world. And Lv8r Labs is going to use that to allow their many ecosystem members to be taking one data set that's not chopped up into lots of different smart contracts, but they'll have one data set that all of the various applications can run against, which will make it far more flexible. It seems like the advantages are almost just intuitive.
I would also add that the particular question of identity, why identity? If I had my choice of products to use to build the Lv8r system, why choose identity? And I would take it back, Lam, to my time in discussion and preparation for your last I think ETH Tokyo. We were working on a SSO project, right? We were talking about an SSO's project submission. So after that experience I had with you, I continued writing and researching SSO as a product improvement for users, and it really drove me hard to consider what is the best way to bring wallets and decentralized systems and self-sovereign data. What's the best way to bring that user experience to business professionals? Well, most business professionals understand SSO, right? They're familiar with Microsoft systems, Google systems. They understand that once they have an identity attested to them, now all of a sudden there are all these efficiencies created that weren't there before. So I really did listen to our time together and understanding the value of that product, because I immediately was searching for where is that value in our technical stack. And kind of the first challenge we hit up against is the problem with identity. It doesn't make any money, right? Who wants to pay to be who they are? No one, right? The identity has to add value to the person for anyone to have any desire to pay for it. And this is inherently the problem with SSO as a product specifically, is that it doesn't make any money unless all of the systems you're trying to integrate with want that user and are going to pay for that to bring that user to the product. And so identity and the federated data room were kind of the two puzzles I wanted to attack first. Is how do we attest our identity? What are all the value drivers of identity in decentralized system and self-sovereign data? And then once we have that identity attested, what do we do with it? And I believe federated data rooms for regulatory compliance and vectorized database for machine learning training. This is really interesting from a data management perspective, because if I'm tokenizing data directly from the hardware on site of our real estate projects, well, that's the best way to train models, is with those tokens, right? And that's how this whole thing adds a level of efficiency that very few projects in the space in decentralized systems, very few are implementing kind of that level of efficiency.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it seems very exciting. So, what phase of your project would you say you're in? Product, I guess, product is ready, right? Being selling to customer,
So
or what like phase? Or
so we have a product demo workflow video that is being released on YouTube today, if not already. And then we're gonna break that video down into smaller chunks to help people digest it, because it's a little technical. But the intent here is to get as many people, trained on what the Lv8r Labs system is intending to do, how it's intending to work, how it's addressing the marketplace. And I've been working with a short list of potential clients for over a year now. So it's very important who we work with, right? Who we choose to work with and how they use the system. Because if they fail to use the system in compliance, this could be a problem for us. So we're being very picky and selective on who we choose to work with. There's no shortage of interest, but most of it is other chains, other marketplaces, right? And then the financial institutions and the developers who want to bring projects to the marketplace.
Cool. Yeah, sounds like a lot of good traction moving on from your side. Can you share with us maybe a bit about the business models of your company? Because I'm assuming this is a for-profit company, right? Yeah, it's not.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We knew that operating any type of model system or machine learning based data system means you have to have a war chest, right? You have to have the funding to back up any potential information property that's generated by machine learning systems. This is why everyone's kind of bullish on AI, but don't know how to integrate beyond very, very sophisticated, code systems, where you're coding up your own agents or you're coding up your own models. So we believe as a business model, we can democratize the tool set of machine learning beyond just Chat GPT and Perplexity. Those are fantastic systems, and as those systems are integrating with Autodesk Cloud, right? There's no shortage of good information of how data management is changing. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to, as a business model, we wanted to leverage our strengths. And what are our strengths? Our strengths is Inveniam is one of the most sophisticated and robust trading, regulated trading marketplaces on the planet. Accumulate, I'd argue, is one of the most sophisticated validation and identity-based systems on the planet. BIM Heroes, our collective group, is some of the leading voices in construction management on the planet. And again, I personally have 10 years of handover experience and now almost 3 years of distributed Web3 experience. I'd like to say I can speak to what the best use case of Web3 or tokenization and securitization is in construction management. And I'd be happy to go, round for round in debate with any Autodesk Cloud professional on the value of their systems versus the value of what we're building. I think you would find it's a pretty close match.
Interesting. Yeah. Can you maybe elaborate a bit more so about the democratized, what is it, access to data or ML models? Are you planning to, I guess, like use the data, sell the data, or sell the token, or what's the, I guess, what's the way
So
for
yeah,
the
so
to
no
make money?
token,
Yeah.
no token right now, right? We're interested in creating a network of validators. We believe the revenue lies in the validation of data, not necessarily in creating the tokens ourselves. Now, our clients are those broker dealers, are those fund managers. They are creating those tokens and they're creating those
Okay.
fractionalized equities. But
I
as
see.
a
So you would
platform,
charge a fees
go ahead.
for the validation. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
So rather than put myself in a particular crosshairs of regulatory environment for creating my own tokens, I'd much rather use this very sophisticated system to help increase the value and the valuation of these projects, and not necessarily cash out on a token myself personally.
I see. Yeah, no, I wasn't referring to your project token. I was just really wondering, like, how does everything fit in? But yeah, I think it makes sense now that you said, like, so basically charging based on fees, since you're like marketplace, right? So I guess you'll be running a fees for a user. Yeah, that makes sense. This fee will be charged in, I guess, fiat or crypto, Web3, a little bit of both,
Either,
whatever the token,
ironically,
either.
that has been one of the kind of best values of our business model has been we've spoken to a number of traditional finance professionals that said, hey, we're interested in playing. We're in discussion with this third party. They have on-chain funds. They want to interact with us, but we don't feel comfortable interacting with those on-chain funds. Can you intermediate with those on-chain funds? I'd love to. Absolutely love to. We'd love to help guide people on-chain through on-chain funds that the traditional finance professionals either don't have the technical understanding or don't have the appetite to, where they just want the underlying asset. They want exposure to the underlying asset. They want exposure to the potential traded equity. And now all of a sudden I make that handover, on-chain versus off-chain very, very easy.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. So, I mean, it seems like everything is going quite smoothly. Any particular challenges that your company face? Sounds like you getting traction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have found the problem with any bleeding edge technology is when you're the 1% teaching the 10%, hoping that the 10% teaches the 90%. You spend a lot of time explaining the same thing over and over and over and over again. And it was kind of my hope that I was part of the 10% preaching to the 90%, but it is in fact turned out to be, no, I'm more of the 1% talking to the 10%. And so my education style, my message, our narrative has changed because of that. Because the people we're talking to, they are some of the smartest people on the planet. It's not a matter of whether they can understand the system. It's about what's in it for them, right? So if we can explain how structuring data and edge system, distributed systems, actually improve the value over or beat the value of centralized systems, right? Well, now I think we have something interesting and exciting. And again, in a field full of tokenized real estate, where I'd say probably 90, maybe 95% of the tokenized assets aren't actually increasing the underlying value, that's a whole lot of wash trading, Lam. That's a tremendous amount of buzz noise about tokenized real estates for people just to get rugged on an asset that's worth less than what they paid for when they bought into the token.
Interesting. Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, in Web3, there's always risk in in a lot of the project, and a lot of people are just probably riding the hype, right? Yeah. I'm actually a bit more curious about like the pricing ranges for the validation. I'm not sure. Is there like a range in particular when when I guess an industry professional come in to want to validate the data, you charge a fee. Is there like a range for? Do you charge by project per? I don't know, per document, per project, maybe share a bit
Per
about that.
document is rough. Per document is rough because we're talking about systems with over 30,000 documents per project or more. So our financial model right now is seats. We believe there's going to be kind of 3 user seats for every product, for every product team. Excuse me, for every project team. We believe there's going to be 3 seats. We believe the average annual organizational spend should be about $10,000 for the existing suites of products for the Lv8r Labs. And then we believe there's going to be about another $10,000 annual spend in additional services. So this is how we've
10,
kind of
10K
modeled.
for 3 people, roughly.
Yes.
10K for 3 people. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, for most fund managers and for most project developers, it's really all you need. A lot of it's the training, right? A lot of it's the onboarding. A lot of it's understanding how to use the systems, which is why we think there's another 10,000 worth of spend there.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Working out. And sounds like you have a lot of things in the pipeline, like because you said earlier, there's many companies now lining up using your solution.
I'm most excited about some of the large architectural engineering firms who are interested in promoting us and platforming us. I have been invited to a pretty famous AEC conference in Ireland in September, and I'm going to be speaking on the data governance stage. And that community, that's the BIM Heroes community I was talking about, all these high level construction project managers. So I have been quietly working, in somewhat of a testnet environment with a number of who I would say are going to be key players in the next adoption phase of this technology. But I think the thing you have to understand is most of the clients we're talking to, they already have deals with some of the largest common data environments available. So it's not necessarily that I'm structuring deals with these common data environments. It's that some of the clients we're going to be onboarding, they already have a special deal with those common data environments to use our system, to leverage our system within their common data environment. That's pretty interesting.
Interesting. So it's not a replacement. It's more like a complementary for the common data environment.
I would say it's complementary if you don't have the confidence to implement a full zero knowledge proofing database system. There are some early adopters who are like jumping in head first, and they want to go all in on chain, and they want to understand public private data synthesis and how models affect that and how they can be attributed or accredited for their data in these on-chain environments. And then I have some that are like, no, I only feel comfortable in my common data environment, but I do want some of the upside. Show me some of that system upside for integrating with the system. And that's really gonna how we get to the full replacement. I would like to say replacement's probably not going to happen within the next year or so, but as machine learning in general improves over the next couple of years, and I guess EVM compatible blockchains, as both of those technologies and continue to improve, we're just going to see that value reflected in the underlying asset if the systems know how to do that.
Interesting. Yeah, that sounds like sounds like you have found a very sweet spot for your product over there, I would say. Because I feel like if you don't have to replace the existing system, what is it, the common data environment? Because and anytime you try and replace any system, it's gonna be a huge hurdle, right? Internal hurdle for any company and IT system to overcome. So if it's complementary, then I feel like it sounds like it's a very sweet spot to hit. Can onboard people on there.
Well, I think you have to have built something of value to the common data environment for the common data environment to care at all. And so I think that's kind of the sweet spot you're talking about, is how do you build a system that wants to take over an old common data environment but can integrate for its user experience? That's the sweet spot.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so just a few more questions here from my side. We close out the show. So in the future, I guess this is for both. Where do you see like the future? Where is there an interesting intersection between real estate and Web3 heading in the future? I mean, we know about the real world assets, but anything interesting from your take?
I'm going to defer to Jay.
Yeah, well, I think Jon has got the more interesting stuff going on. I mean, from the Accumulate point of view, we're going to be rolling out a way to get rid of bridges entirely. And in fact, Jon's group is going to be using that at some point in the near future, a combination of our abstract account technology and our cross-chain technology. But bridges, what was it in 2022, 2 point something billion dollars in hacks. And
there's a lot of hacks
the
for
only
bridges,
reason
yeah.
they exist, yeah, 69% of all DeFi hacks were bridge hacks. And bridges only exist because of the limitations of the smart contract platforms. And that's one of the problems we solve. And it's going to make life so much easier for the DeFi world.
I would add that what Lv8r is excited about, we're pursuing heavily European market because of how much commercial interest we have in clients using our system. Europe in many ways is a driving force of new construction build methodology, right? So there are a handful of hot zones in the world where the leading thinkers of construction management are U.S., UK, China. Those are basically the three. We
Interesting.
feel like what's happening in the regulatory environment for CASPs and VASPs, virtual asset service providers, and crypto asset service providers. I would love to say that by next year we may be partnered with a financial institution that will allow us to apply for our European VASP. Excuse me, CASP. We are seeking. We are currently in discussions with a partner for a VASP license for a European audit, our European audience, and it is my hope that we can start the 3-year CASP application process in Ireland. Personally, I believe stablecoins are beyond real world assets the next real use case of decentralized systems. So, what kind of wakes me up in the morning is what a smart portfolio. If we're building smart building systems, what would a smart portfolio look like, and what would a smart portfolio with stablecoins look like? How does stablecoins improve the user experience of indexing, right, and project indexing? So that's super in the weeds stuff. But I think in the next year or so, especially with like a Circle IPO, I think stablecoins are going to be even more interesting.
Awesome. Yeah, it's interesting. So, would you say that I guess a lot of the European regulation is actually working in your favor then, John?
Yes and no.
Like,
Yes and no. In some aspects, construction management, or what they're calling circular construction processes, this is actually the industry catching up, right? This is the common data environments and the project managers all catching up with these distributed systems. So in that aspect, yes, I have a regulatory environment where all the regulators see and acknowledge and value all the value drivers of distributed systems for procurement and supply chain management and all of the higher levels of systems that this can be built off. At the same time, MICA and some of the data protection laws, I think this is just guidance, right? We have to have guidance in order to build projects. Here in the US, I'd like to say the appetite for regulatory environment is changing. Clearly, we work with regulated broker dealers now who probably don't necessarily think the system is all that broken, but we also work with a number of developers and teams who would like to see how the regulatory environment will change here within the next year. So I'm leaning into Europe for the reason that the regulatory environment in which our product is specifically in construction management, it's going to open us up to a whole new appreciation and adoption. And I'm hoping, crypto broadly also continues to have favorable outcomes regulatorily, in all jurisdictions.
The European tokenization regulatory environment is much better than the U.S. I mean, the the U.S. is going out of its way to be unfriendly to crypto and tokenization in general. It's really unfortunate because it's driving a lot of the innovation away from the U.S. But it's kind of a yep. And John is an example. He's setting up his SASP in Ireland. Thank you very much, SEC.
Yeah, I think I guess some regulation is good, but of course some regulation is really like hurdles for a lot of innovators in Web3. So I think all of us, we would like to have more regulatory clarity from different countries and different regulatory authorities, right? Hopefully, maybe someday we'll get that. But
Yes.
Well, I'm not going to wait.
yeah, no, I don't. I don't think any of
No.
us want to wait. I mean, Web3 speed of Web3 is moving is extremely fast. Yeah, if you wait, I think you cannot really survive. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So just two more questions here from my side. I guess do you guys have any advice? I guess for John, it would be like advice for people who want to run your own Web3 company, and then for Jay, is that do you have any advice for people who want to break into Web3 from Web2 or maybe? Yeah. So maybe John go first.
Yeah, I'll go first. participate in hackathon events would be my advice. It's how I met you, Lam. It's how I met Jay Smith. Um, when I talk to most just say software professionals, just normal
Yeah.
people who are excited about crypto and generally, when I explain to them my hackathon experience, they're like, so you didn't have to learn, how to code in order to participate in a hackathon? No, you can participate as just a product appreciator, right? A user of a product. And I would highly encourage that if you're passionate or you're interested in distributed systems or Web3, there's probably a reason, right? A lot of the real estate professionals who I know who have pivoted into Web3, they're doing so to stay competitive in their professional role. And so I would highly encourage other real estate professionals, but just broadly, Web3 appreciators, don't don't shy away from opportunities to learn technology you may know enough to be dangerous but not enough to not be dangerous. The only way you get that experience is to put yourself out there a number of times. My recent hackathon projects reflect experience and understanding from the very first one and along the way. And so you don't get that experience unless you put yourself out there, and that's really hard for people, especially some of the younger folks, the younger guys who maybe don't feel comfortable public speaking or participating. But you have to do it. You have to put yourself out there. You have to accept that if you're gonna found a product, you're gonna spend at least a couple of years, everyone telling you you're stupid. This is the worst decision you will ever make in your life. You have to build for that. You have to accommodate for that in your game plan. But if you do, I will say that the amount of people that I get to say, I love what I do. Like I would not want to do anything else if I was given the choice, because I get to just point and, buildings exist, and I get to point and systems exist. We would be a wizard if this was the Middle Ages, right? This is sorcery. And I'm proud and honored to wield the power I do, despite the fact that I still do not have a computer science degree.
Awesome message. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And I also totally agree that I think hackathons are a great way to nurture and build your passion and experiment with some new project, right? And then eventually turn into a company like the way you did. Jay, do you have any advice you want to break into Web3?
Well, I do have a computer science degree, and blockchain is the core of Web3, and all of most of the blockchain projects like Accumulate are open source projects. And if you want to break into Web3, every one of the open source blockchain projects are always looking for people that want to hop in, roll their sleeves up, and contribute. And one of our biggest problems is that we have people hop in, start contributing, and all of a sudden they get sucked up by some company that offers them a salary. Can you imagine?
It's
And
quite
so,
normal
but I
actually
mean,
in
that's
Web3, but
that's yeah, and but that's really the way to get into Web3. And the nice thing about it is there's huge communities around these projects. You hop on the Discord channel, you register with whatever source control that they're using, and take off, learn, build, get laughed at occasionally. It's fun.
Put yourself out there.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, completely agree with that. I think there's so many people who just found a job through contributing, like earnestly contributing and building to help protocols for no
Yeah.
expectation, and suddenly they are just exactly like how you say it. So awesome. Yeah. Final question, gentlemen. Where can people follow you or your company? And feel free to share with us any public handle, username, website. Yeah.
Sure.
Jay.
So Lv8r, Lv8r Labs, labs.com. Nice and easy. And I'm pretty active in LinkedIn. I spend a large portion of my time trying to aggregate good industry reporting. In crypto, I don't think there's near enough good industry reporting. So I would highly encourage any of your listeners to follow or connect with me on LinkedIn, just to get in touch with a tap or a feed of industry reporting, so that if one of your followers does want to put themselves out there in a hackathon or in some type of coding event, they can lean on that industry reporting for some competence and speaking points.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Jay?
So accumulatenetwork.io, that's the main website for the Accumulate Network. Go look there. There's all kinds of interesting things. And I too am on LinkedIn. Feel free to message me if you want some pointers to get into the Accumulate community, or go to any other community, but always glad to help.
Awesome. Yeah. I make sure to put all your show notes and also your website down here in the show description so that people can follow and then maybe connect with you as well too. Yeah. So make it easy. Once again, gentlemen, it's been really fun today chatting with you about construction management, beam. What is it? AEC. I'm probably still messing up the term, but anyway,
All the
the
acronyms.
syndicate. Yeah, the syndicate. There's so many different acronyms. Yeah, but it's been really fun and enjoyable talking about that and how Web3 has been really helping the real estate industry. So it's really great to see an amazing use case of Web3 from my part. So
Well,
once again, thank you for your
I
time.
appreciate the invitation, Lam. I have followed your content for a little bit, and while I did not have the opportunity to meet with you in person at ETH Tokyo, I look forward to maybe ETH Phoenix here in Arizona, and maybe that would be fun.
I'm sure we'll meet, in one of the Web3 events somewhere in this small little world. I'm going to a lot of events, so yeah, for sure. Yeah, awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. And we're back to my studio. What do you guys think about this episode with Jonathon Chambless and Jay Smith? So there was quite a lot of concept being discussed in this episode. I think that we can see how John's company is really trying to create a new ecosystem that will benefit both the finance professional and the AEC, which is architecture, engineering, and construction professionals in commercial real estate projects. And since his company is applying very innovative Web3 real use case on real assets, I'm sure they will go quite far because there's a lot of demand. For the next episode, we'll be talking to Martin, who is running business operations at Maple Finance, the largest institutional DeFi platform with $4 billion in loan volume and $200 million in total value locked. They are launching Syrup, a new protocol unlocking institutional yield for everyone with a pledge program. If you enjoyed this episode, please give a like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. Thank you for watching and see you next time.